There is a very big film which is out this week. You'll have heard about it.
Has anyone noticed?
I think so. It's kind of everywhere on all the posters and that kind of thing.
So, Wicked for Good, which is essentially the second act of the. Now, I confess, so I haven't seen the stage show, as I said before. It's the second act of the 2003 stage musical by Stephen Schwartz and Winnie Holtzman, which was itself inspired by a novel by Gregory Maguire. Again, let's start with the BBFC. The first film was PG for mild threat and discrimination and 160 minutes long. The second film is PG for mild threat, violence, innuendo, language, and 137 minutes long. What did I say? The first one was 160 minutes long. Did I say 160 or did I say 137? First one was 160. This is 137, but they're both PG.
Right.
So if you've been living in a bubble, this is the musical that follows the different lives of Elphaba, played by Cynthia Erivo, who will become the Wicked Witch of the West, and Glinda, played by Ariana Grande, who becomes Glinda. Also features Jonathan Bailey as Handsome Fierro, whose loyalties are torn, and Jeff Goldblum as Jeff Goldblum, demonstrating to us that he's basically been playing the Wizard of Oz all his life. We just didn't notice.
That's true.
And now, fine. Okay, there we are. That's the role. We also have Michelle Yeoh as the headmistress, who initially recognizes Elphaba's powers. So part 1 and part 2 were shot concurrently, directed by John M. Chu, of course, who made Crazy Rich Asians. Part 1, again, everyone knows this, but just in case you've been living under a rock, opens with the declaration of the Wicked Witch's death, much jovial rejoicing about the fact that no one mourns the wicked who die alone. And Glinda is the kind of beaming MC. And then someone shouts, but hang on, weren't you friends with her? And then the whole film then goes back to the beginning and tells that story. We will revisit that beginning at the end of part 2. So part 1 ended with the show-stopping Defying Gravity. There was a thing that Schwartz said, we found it very difficult to get past Defying Gravity without a break, because that song is specifically written to bring a curtain down. And that was a high note. I mean, the first film ended on the highest of high notes, and it was that. And it's worth saying that there isn't anything in the second film that will top that, but it's a little bit like the thing I always cite, which was Joseph Heller was once interviewed by a newspaper writer who said, the thing is, you'll never write anything better than Catch-22. And he replied, few people will. So I think that kind of applies here. So this picks up sometime after the first film. Elphaba is now outcast and is known as the Wicked Witch of the West. She is being painted as the scourge of the Emerald City. So she is now sort of fully been demonized. Glinda is now a happy, shiny celebrity, a supposed beacon of good, watched over and manipulated by Michelle Yeoh's character, and of course by the wizard himself, who is the sort of orchestrator behind all of this. Animals thoroughly subjugated, outcast in Oz. The population are being fed a diet of lies and propaganda. Wow, it sounds like The Running Man, propped up by these mythical incarnations of good versus evil, which are being used effectively to keep everybody on side. So look, I went into the first film really trepidatiously because I hadn't seen the stage. I knew that the stage musical was a big hit, but I went in with a heavy heart, also thinking about how long the film was, and I was just knocked out by how much I enjoyed it. I was really surprised, not least because it has genuine substance amidst all the pizzazz and the earworm show tunes. Because there's a lot of kind of quite radical things going on that are set up in the first film. There's the whole thing, people being rejected because they're different, the mistreatment of animals, which has got a very sort of Orwellian thing to it, the way in which the suppression of language is used to control people. And we even get the speech in which the wizard basically says, that you can bring a divided land together by giving people a scapegoat and the common enemy. And that strikes a particularly contemporary note, did back then when it came out a year ago and still does now. So the first film was long, but it flew by. This is shorter, although I have to say it doesn't feel shorter, crucially because it's darker. It's got into the sort of the far less jolly weeds of the scapegoating of Elphaba, the manipulation, the full-on manipulation of the wizard, who is now just 100% bad. I always was, but at the beginning, you're not quite sure. And the generally kind of candy-colored corruption of the land of Oz. Now, the thing with the first one was the vocals sounded great because they were recorded live. Apparently, they used the same technique that they were using in Les Miserables, and we had a discussion on the show about that. That wasn't the first time that had been done. There have been other precedents for it. But the songs are good, and they are performed brilliantly by fantastic singers. As I said, there isn't anything that's going to top Defying Gravity, but it's kind of like saying there's nothing that's going to top Sugar Baby Love in the Rubettes back catalogue. It's like, what are you going to do? The director has cited as influences Spielberg's Hook, although I think that's really just to do with the size of the sets. Just, we're going to do physical sets. I think that's all that is. But Pleasantville and The Truman Show, and I think those two things are quite telling because what they tell you is that this is an artificial reality in Oz, that the place is, it's all happy plastic smiles. It's really to do with the difference between what you see and what's actually going on. And I said in the first film, it was a bit like kind of steampunk Metropolis meets MGM. This is much more in that kind of, everything is to do with artifice. And because on one level, it is a story about brainwashing. It is a story about corruption. And it is a story, particularly in this second act, about a witch hunt. And it's about how the public need to be given baddies in order that they can like the goodies. All this is quite expressly stated, and it's quite dark subject matter. Again, everything is handsomely shot, although again, a lot less. I mean, there's a lot of pizzazz, there's a lot of stuff going on, but the whole tone is generally much darker than the first one. And I think the thing that you have to think about it is this is very much the second act. I mean, I would imagine, very few people are going to go and see Wicked for good without having seen Wicked. I mean, Wicked is all over streaming services anyway. And if you are going to see Wicked for good, do watch Wicked again, just so you're up to speed. I know some people know the whole thing off by heart. They won't need to, but it seems foolish to see the second part without seeing the first part, because it'd be like walking into the theatre and seeing the second act of a show, which you can't really assess without the first, because I think that it is really one film. It is one continuous film in which the things that are set up in the first film have to be worked through in the second film. Now, the other thing about the second film, second act, is that it's got to do the slightly more complicated job of tying the narrative against the arrival of Dorothy in Oz. And so there are key beats that they have to hit in which you effectively see Dorothy and the friends from Wizard of Oz, from the story that we know, in circumstances that the narrative of Wicked is then contriving to refashion. So the arrival of the house landing on the witch, that why are we in the castle? There's a very funny bit about the building of Glinda's flying orb, which is meant to look magical, but is in fact a kind of steampunk thing that works with machinery. We even get the actual building of the yellow brick road, which Elphaba is trying to disrupt. It's like, it's like, remember when they were building that bypass and people were trying to stop them building the bypass? There's kind of that going on. There are also some very neat narrative twists. Anyone who's familiar with the Wicked narrative, which is most people in the world, not me, will know these already. But you kind of get origin stories of characters that you know from Wizard of Oz. I mean, there's one of which I didn't realize until the very, very end. And then Julie, my friend, the photographer, said, but of course you recognize from that shot when you saw them splayed out. I went, oh no, I didn't realize that was how that was going to happen. I mean, so there were things that were tied up very, very neatly. So honestly, it's not the rip-roaring blast that the first film was, but then it is the second act, and it's not meant to be. And it is dealing with stuff which just is darker. And I think that as the second half of the overall arc, I think it works really, really well. I know that some people are a bit like, well, it's not as good as the first film, but I don't quite understand, because they are really the same thing. They are the two halves of the same story. And so having gone into the first film and thinking I'm not going to enjoy this, and then being knocked out by how much I enjoyed it, I went into the second film thinking, okay, I know that I like this, and then being slightly surprised by how much darker it was. But thinking about the two of them together, I think that they are a remarkable achievement. And I don't have any issue with the fact that this is darker, even for all the pizzazz and all the stuff that's going on. And believe me, there's plenty of stuff being thrown at the screen, but the underlying narrative is going to some darker places, and I think it does that pretty well. And like I said, I think that no good deed thing is an absolute banger, but it isn't Defying Gravity.
And if you are offered the opportunity, therefore, to see
the whole thing,
the first one, Break for Coffee, the second one, that sounds as though
I'd do
it's the complete thing, and that's the best way to see it.
Yeah,
even though it's going to take 5 hours.
And I imagine that at places like the Prince Charles Theatre, the Prince Charles Cinema, that is going to be a standard. You know, you go in, you do the first one, all 160 minutes of it. You come out, you have a coffee break. You go in, you do the second one, 137 minutes of it. And I think that when seen together, the second one will seem more solidly corner pocket success than perhaps it does as a standalone.